As Prime Minister for 8.5 years, Brian Mulroney redefined the country.
Canada is open for business again.
He brought in free trade, the GST, and with the Meech Lake Accord, he tried to bring Quebec into the Constitution, but failed. Now, Mulroney actively opposed apartheid. He also has the greenest record of any prime minister in history. He grew up in a working-class family in Baie-Comeau, Quebec. He was an English kid in a French town who became bilingual. Now, he started his career as a labor lawyer and was always in business, but behind the scenes, he was heavily involved in the Conservative Party. Then in the mid-70s, he decided to get into politics for realsies. He ran for the Progressive Conservative leadership, but he lost. Then in the early to mid-80s, things were changing in Canada, right? The run of Pierre Trudeau was about to be over. Canada seemed like they were ready for something different. 1983, Mulroney ran again for the leadership of the Conservative Party and won. Think about that. He had never held a seat, and he was already the Conservative leader. A year later, it appeared Canada was ready for a change, and Conservatives swept the power with the biggest majority ever. Of the 282 available seats, Mulroney's Tories won 211, and it was Conservative time. Mulroney in Canada, Thatcher in Britain, and Reagan in the US. And for a while, well, all the Irish eyes were smiling and business was booming. But during Mulroney's second term, a recession hit. The deficit down to $42 billion. And at its low, Mulroney's approval rating was 11%. After he stepped down in 1993, well, the Tories suffered the fate that, well, the Liberals had suffered when he took over. It was a disaster. They lost 149 seats and were left with just 2.
You could count Tory seats on your fingers.
Mulroney had to face the Airbus affair, where he was accused of accepting kickbacks from Air Canada's purchase of Airbus planes. The RCMP never laid any charges, and Mulroney sued the government. He got a formal apology plus a $2 million settlement. But now there's a public inquiry, and today he stays busy. Mulroney is a partner at his law firm, and he serves on the boards of some powerful corporations. Oh, he's back on TV as well as a judge on Canada's next great prime minister. Please welcome Canada's 18th Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney. How are things? Nice. Right, you're back making a television show. You didn't have enough of Ben in TV. You went, I'm going to come back and make another TV show.
Well, I thought that he's done so well, I thought I'd try and learn. maybe replace him on Canadian Idol.
That would be pretty good.
I thought I'd perform and hopefully get chosen, and that'd stink the joint out for sure.
Do you know what song you would cover? Have you got a karaoke song? Yeah.
No, Irish Eyes Are Smiling.
Well, you and Ronnie did that really well, didn't you?
Yeah, it's the only one I know.
That's your only song. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
There would, do you ask Ben Mulroney for tips on how to be on the air?
Not really, because I'm on the air so infrequently. But
yeah.
Your generation and his, you're the same generation. You do it very well and naturally. So I watch and I learn from that.
There you go. We're searching for the next great prime minister on this show. Yeah. For a guy who's been it for a while, what are the kind of qualities that you need to have if you're going to take a job like that?
Well, I've been saying to young people that while they're at school, they really should focus not on politics, really partisan politics, but on their history and economics and studies. So that when they get into a position as a member of parliament or as a cabinet minister or prime minister, they'll have a superb intellectual background. They'll be able to grapple with some of these problems. There's a lot of confusion in Canadian politics, and I'm not sure where it comes from the media or what have you. If you read about a young politician, they always read about how popular he is. Mm-hmm. But popularity is meaningless. It's how principled he is. Or is he courageous enough to fight for those things in which he believes? You have to have ideas that will benefit Canada in the longer haul. Usually an idea that's going to do that is unpopular. And as you fight for it, you'll make yourself unpopular, but your country will benefit in the longer term. And I think that's the way young people might want to consider public service.
What's it like to realize that you need more than that? Because popular, sadly, is what gets a lot of people elected.
Well, I think it's very important to realize that, like, if you're running for the leadership of your party, of course you've got to have enough votes to win, and if you want to be prime minister, you've got to win the election. But as Mario Cuomo said, you know, you campaign in poetry, and you govern in prose. As President Obama is finding out now, there's one big difference between running a campaign and trying to run a country. Look at the problems he's confronted with every morning. And the only certainty is that he is going to become progressively unpopular if he focuses in on the real problems. But eventually he'll be rewarded when people see him fighting these tough fights.
Do you ever get to play armchair prime minister in the way that I would watch a hockey game and I would say, oh, don't do that? Would you watch Question Period? And because you hear, you know, Stephen Harper, you hear Michael Ignatieff or Jack Layton or Gilles Duceppe, you hear them say stuff. Do you ever sit at home and go, no, that's the wrong play?
I won't identify him, but I was once with Mila at a den at home, and I watched a Canadian prime minister in Israel being asked a question, and he said, and his answer was, I don't know whether I'm in North, South, East, or West Israel, or Jerusalem. I turned to Mila and said, this is so bad. I'm going to get myself re-elected leader of the Conservative Party, and I'm going to become prime minister again. And there was total silence. So I said to Mila, did you hear what I said, dear? And she said, yes, I did. I said, well, what do you think? She said, I think it's a wonderful idea, and I hope your new wife really enjoys it.
But did you ever think about getting that in? Because you enjoyed such enormous success as a prime minister, and then when you left, the approval ratings were very low, around 11%. So I know you were very popular, and then you were incredibly unpopular. Do you want that redemption moment where you say...
I have it.
You have it now?
I have it, absolutely. Harry Truman left office as President of the United States, the most unpopular president in the history of polling. 45 years later, he's viewed as the 5th greatest president in the history of the Republic. There it is. All you've got to do is do the right thing while you're there, wait for history to do its job.
How do you feel about the way the party has gone?
Look, every prime minister does what he can. There's no doubt in my mind that in the 141 years that Canada has existed, every prime minister has sought to do his best to strengthen the country, irrespective of party. Everybody is only there. You wouldn't take the abuse if you didn't love your country. So everyone tries to strengthen Canada, and I think the present prime minister is probably trying to do the same thing.
What we're going to do is we're going to take a break, talk more politics, but more importantly, we'll find out who he voted for on Canadian Idol. Former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney when we come back. It felt like you guys respected each other. I don't know if that was true. It certainly doesn't feel like they respect each other now. Do you see a difference when you watch it, going that this is a different Ottawa than it used to be? Back here on the hour, we're talking to former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney on the show. Every time we have a politician come on, we always try to find out great stories about Vladimir Putin because it seems they all know Vladimir Putin. In your era, when you had the days with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, even though you were a sitting prime minister, did you ever look around, maybe look at your wife and go, I can't believe this is happening? Have those crazy moments by being the leader of a country?
Yeah, at my first G7 summit, which took place in Germany in 1985, I sat down at a table. There was Ronald Reagan there, Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl, François Mitterrand, Nakasone, Andreotti. And they asked me to move over just a little bit as the waiter went by. And I refused to do it because I figured if I got up, they'd take my chair away.
You had no idea?
I say, what am I doing here?
That's so very Canadian, isn't it?
Well, it's when you're first getting started, a lot of these things are so unusual for you. I mean, look, I was from Baie-Comeau, and my father was an electrician with 6 children, and here I was in the Vatican and Buckingham Palace and so on, and I knew full well, taking a look around, that I wasn't raised there, you know, and so you feel, it takes you a little while to get used to the things that are pleasant to do like that.
I think people don't realize just how hard it is to govern and all the things you don't know. when you got into, you started right away, did you look around and think, I don't know if we can do this? Like you were talking about with Obama, all the things you promised. Did you look around and say, I don't know if we can do this? There's too much on our plate. The economy, you governed through a really bad time economically as well. Mm-hmm. Did it feel overwhelming?
Yeah, it did. One of the things that politicians always talk about what they inherit. When I arrived, David Peterson, who was the Liberal leader, said Brian Mulroney has inherited one hell of a mess. And Jean Chrétien, who had been the finance minister in the Trudeau government, said, we left the cupboard bare. Did they ever? For example, you see all the talk about Harper increasing the deficit enormously, which is a huge increases over the next number of years. That will leave Canada with a deficit of 2% of GDP. Mm-hmm. What I inherited from Mr. Trudeau was 8.7% of GDP, the largest deficit in the history of Canada. In our 141 years, there's never been anything like it. So when you take the interest payments on that, then you've got the golden handcuffs on you. There's so little that you can do because you have to pay off the bills that have been accumulated over so many years. That was a real tough one for us. We managed to begin the process of doing something about it and doing other things, free trade and the GST and all of that. But it would have been nice to govern with a surplus.
What do you think now when you look at the House of Commons? I'm 36 years old, so I remember the era of you and Trudeau and even and when Joe Clark, Levesque, and all that, and Ed Broadbent. It felt like a different House than it does now. It felt like you guys respected each other. I don't know if that was true. It certainly doesn't feel like they respect each other now. Do you see a difference when you watch it, going that this is a different Ottawa than it used to be?
Well, Pierre Trudeau and Joe Clark and Ed Broadbent, these were John Turner. Mm-hmm. These were great debaters and great parliamentarians. I mean, there was none of this, or I shouldn't say none, but there was very little of this nonsense that passes for debate in the House of Commons today. They were great orators, and they dealt with great issues. Nothing was perfect, but when I was there, my observation was that it was a privilege to be part of that, mm-hmm. that public debate. We had big debates. There were big issues being debated, apart from the economy. Meech Lake.
And national unity was big.
National unity was big. When I did the special debate, when I did the Canada-United States acid rain treaty on the environment with the Americans, NAFTA, la création du sommet de la francophonie, all of these things were big ticket items, and they lent themselves to, the Manitoba language issue, which was a huge leadership question in 83 and 84. Mm-hmm. Huge, because it dealt with leadership. And I remember Trudeau speaking in that debate. I spoke in it, of course. Trudeau spoke in it. He was excellent. I mean, it was high caliber oratory. Mm-hmm. Joe Clark spoke in it. He was terrific. So it was, those were big days.
Let me wrap on this. What did it mean to you to be called Canada's greenest Prime Minister?
Well, it meant a lot because, you kind of wonder, at a time when we were involved in the Gulf War, free trade, the GST, all of these tough issues that dealt largely with the economy and the military and so on. We were at the same time on another track trying to make Canada a green country and trying to provide international leadership from a Canadian base. Jean Charest was my Minister of the Environment, and he did a fabulous job at that Rio conference. We tried hard. You kind of wonder, is anybody paying any attention to this, or do they only pay attention to things like free trade or the war or that kind of stuff? But so when I was selected by the environmental groups as the greenest Prime Minister in Canadian history, I think to their surprise, and certainly to mine, I felt very good about it for me and my colleagues, because we had put 10 years of hard work in, and finally, years later, it was recognized, so I felt good about it.
Who's your favorite Canadian Idol contestant ever? Do you have one?
My favorite Canadian what?
Idol contestant. Do you just love one? Did you vote? Did you ever vote? Because I know you believe in democracy. You were the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I voted early and I voted often.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Right on, everybody. All right, the Right Honourable